Welcome to the Disc Golf Doctor. Today we're going to talk about strengthening the rotator cuff. The reasons why these are important will be found in our previous discussion on shoulder injury prevention, and even the first episode we ever did, we went over some basic exercises to initiate us in this process. So I'll put a link for those who want to see particularly the shoulder injury prevention episode. It'll give great context to what we're about to talk now. Sorry for some of this back and forth. I tried recording all this outside and really found all the background noise made it just impossible to listen to for the most part. So I might include a clip or two outside just because it's decent weather for once, and we'll include stuff from inside just so you can actually hear it and not go crazy. Before we get started, I had to share this clip with you. Let's see how beautiful it was outside. This is my home course. Great first hole. See how beautiful the sky is there. It's a fun first shot where you have a long out-of-bounds field in front of us with long grass that you have to go over and carry. It's fun to throw several discs. It's hard not to throw your entire bag up here, but just wanted to share this beautiful shot with you guys. I know my form's not perfect, so as you guys are working on your form, so am I. No, but I just wanted to share that with you. So why is strengthening the rotator cuff important? There's a lot of reasons why it's very important, but one particular injury that we see all the time and statistically happens very commonly to people is shoulder impingement. The rotator cuff does a lot of things to help out protecting the shoulder, but one major thing it does is it adds this compressive force holding the head of the humerus within the socket. We've talked about how the head of the humerus is really large and the glenoid fossa of the socket is really small, so that humerus has to really stay exactly in one spot. It really shouldn't be moving or translating too far anterior, posterior, superior, inferior. What becomes the issue with impingement is that you have the supraspinatus, which is one of the rotator cuff muscles and tendons that comes in and attaches in the shoulder, and it travels through what's called the subacromial space, where you have the humerus on the bottom and you have the acromia on top, and the bursa and the supraspinatus tendon come in between. We know that when the shoulders are protracted, when they're forward, that subacromial space narrows. And then if the rotator cuff muscles aren't strong, when we go to raise up the arm or do certain motions, the humerus will glide up because of a shearing force of the deltoid muscle that produces, and potentially put pressure on that supraspinatus tendon. So strengthening those rotator cuff muscles really prevents this type of issue, as well as other things we've talked about, improving thoracic mobility, improving posture. Those things will also contribute as well. So I want to break up the discussion into the different rotator cuff muscles to talk about what they do and how to strengthen them. The first rotator cuff muscle that we're going to talk about is the supraspinatus. Supraspinatus is the one that raises your arm up. It adds that compressive load we were just talking about. To strengthen it is rather simple. There's a couple different ways we do it, but the main discussions are looking at EMG studies as to what motions cause the greatest activation of that muscle, but then also putting in context is what's the safest way to do it. One exercise that's been proposed in the past is doing what's called an empty can exercise, which would be raising up the arm with the thumb pointing down. It's a really bad idea, particularly with what we do. We see when we have people that already have shoulder issues, because when you go into shoulder internal rotation, it doesn't allow the greater tuberosity in the shoulder, a little area in the humerus that has some muscular attachments, or the tendons come and attach there. It protrudes out and can easily actually cause impingement by putting pressure on those tendons as you raise up the arm in this position. So it's a really bad idea, first of all, if you have an issue, and second of all, it can cause an issue if you do that repetitively. So I would stay away from raising up the arm with shoulder internal rotation. What you want to do is more what they call full can, which is instead of raising the arm up with the thumb down, we're going to raise up the arm with the thumb up. Pretty simple exercise. You can do that. You do that with a weight and do repetitions here. We also have people step and do it with the arms bent. Either is perfectly appropriate as long as you're not compensating by leaning back into it, really shrugging your shoulders, doing some other aberrant motion to compensate.
The next two muscles we're going to do are the infraspinatus and the teres minor. These muscles do shoulder external rotation. Very important for what we do. What they also do is they also add that compressive load, like we talked about, a compressive force to hold the female head within the socket. and it also prevents the shoulder from going too far, humeral head rather, going too far anteriorly. So what's important to realize with this is that you get better activation of those muscles with less shoulder abduction. So abduction is this direction. So if I do external rotation here, I get more activation than I would up here. Oftentimes you see people do the exercise pulling it back in this position because this is more of a functional position, particularly for pitchers, a lot of overhead athletes. You know, if you're going to do an overhead throw, you're going to want to have some strength of these muscles here, but you're going to get better activation here. And in this position, you're going to get less deltoid activation and less supraspinatus activation. So not that supraspinatus activation is a bad thing in general, but if we're really trying to target the infraspinatus and the teres minor, we want to find the position that does that best. So if we have...
The nice thing about these exercises is they're rather simple. All I'm doing is laying on my side, taking a light weight, raising it up and down, keeping my elbow there at my side so it's not raising up into the air. Shouldn't be painful. Stay within that range that you can comfortably do without really forcing it. And I still keep that elbow by the side. Start with my hand in towards my stomach. I'm going to rotate out this time. You don't need to go too far beyond having that forearm straight ahead of you. Most of the time, if people go too far beyond that, they start bringing the elbow away from the side, cheating in one way or another. Same idea in that I'm trying not to turn my shoulders either. The last of the rotator cuff muscles is the subscapularis. Subscapularis does shoulder internal rotation, and it adds that compressive load, and it also provides some anterior stability for the shoulder. This muscle is affected also by shoulder abduction only with one of the heads. The other heads of the subscapularis isn't affected by the amount of abduction. But what's probably more important is that when we have the shoulder and less abduction, you get more activation of the pec major and your lats. Those muscles also do shoulder internal rotation and will compensate for weakness in the subscapularis. So doing some strengthening up here in shoulder abduction makes sense because it'll really target that muscle and won't allow you to just continually compensate for weakness and never actually gain strength there. It's not like it's contraindicated to do strengthening here by your side. It still makes sense, but people who are really weak will inherently compensate if you're not really paying attention. The motion that's going to encourage that even further would be doing shoulder adduction, horizontal adduction as you're doing that motion. You see that people do that when they're doing resisted internal rotation. Not only are they doing this, but then they start doing this because they're getting that pec major in particular to activate, to compensate for that weakness. Here are a few exercises demonstrating what we were just talking about for the shoulder internal rotation of the subscapularis. We could do just straight shoulder internal rotation. It's harder to mess up doing this, just bringing the arm forward with resistance. The only thing I don't love about doing it with TheraBand is that you have a lot of resistance when your arm's up at 90 degrees of external rotation, which lessens as your arm gets closer to the plane of the band, but it still makes sense for the reasons we just elaborated. The next exercise we're going to do showed really good muscle activation. You're going to combine the shoulder internal rotation with some horizontal adduction. Even though the adduction is going to get you some pec activation, still showed really good subscap activation without an excessive amount of pec activation. It's a really good exercise if you can coordinate the movements. I think part of the reason too is since the band's somewhat at the side, you're still having to force those internal rotators for a little bit longer in some ways. I'm going to stand with my body right in line with the band. I'm going to keep my elbow at the side. Some studies indicate that having the shoulder slightly away from the body had better muscle activation. You could take a little towel or pillow and put it by your side. Hug it in tight. And you're going to bring your hand in toward your stomach. The idea is I'm keeping my elbow right at the side, like I said. You're not letting it come forward like that. Really trying to avoid having the shoulders turn. Those are the two mistakes people tend to make. Keeping my elbow right there, coming back and forth, nice and controlled. Coming all the way in. The last thing to talk about is parameters. You're not going for strength here, you're going for endurance. So rather than increasing the amount of weight or resistance, start with increasing the volume. Go for aiming for 3 sets of 15 is ideal, or maybe even a little bit more. If you can get to that point without fatiguing the muscle, at that point increase the resistance or increase the weight that you're using. But go for volume, not for higher amount of weight or resistance. So 2 cool things that happened the last couple weeks. First off, our physical therapy practice won Best of Hartford, which is pretty exciting. I'll provide a link if anyone's interested in looking us up. And second of all, I at a tournament a couple weeks ago, I won a disc golf basket, so I was pretty excited about that. I wanted to share that with you guys. It gives me the opportunity to practice a little bit more. So thanks for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, let me know. And thanks for watching.